If you watched the news today, you saw the headline, and you likely saw the clip. Mitch McConnell standing at the podium in the well of the Senate, delivering what many are already calling the most consequential speech of his long career. The chirons on your screen probably said something about a breakup or a feud, framing this as just another chapter in the long, turbulent saga between the Senate minority leader and the former president. But if you stop there, if you view this solely as a clash of personalities or a burst of sudden anger, you are missing the actual story. What happened on that floor wasn't an emotional outburst. It wasn't a personal grievance aired in public. It was a calculated institutional maneuver designed to shift the tectonic plates of the Republican Party. When you look at how power actually moves in Washington, you learn quickly that leaders like McConnell do not burn bridges unless they have already built a new road to walk on. Today was that road being unveiled. You saw a speech. What I saw was a permission structure being erected brick by brick for 49 other senators who have been waiting for a signal to move. I want to walk you through exactly what happened. Not just what was said into the microphone, but what was being communicated to the donors, the whips, and the wavering members of the conference who were watching from their desks. We often talk about political earthquakes, and usually it is hyperbole. Today it isn't. To understand why this moment is different, you have to look past the drama and focus on the mechanics. McConnell is a creature of the Senate. He cares about the institution and his majority more than he cares about any single politician. For years, he has navigated a delicate balance with Donald Trump. He has absorbed attacks. He has stayed silent when others spoke out. He has always prioritized the long game. That is why today's speech is so jarring. It signals that the calculation has changed. The cost of alignment now outweighs the benefit. And McConnell didn't just drift away. He severed the tie with a legalistic precision that makes it very hard to reattach. Think about what it felt like watching that moment. The silence in the chamber was described as deafening, and for once, that cliché holds weight. Usually the Senate floor is a place of low hums, side conversations, and rustling papers. But when leadership steps up to deliver a verdict like this, the room stops because everyone knows the implications. You might be wondering why this matters to you if you aren't a political junkie. It matters because this isn't just inside baseball. This is about the choices available to you as a voter in the next cycle. It is about whether one of the two major parties in this country remains tethered to one man or whether it splinters into something unrecognizable. When the most powerful Republican in Washington decides to effectively end the career of the party's de facto leader, it changes the menu of options for the entire electorate. Let's look at the speech itself. Sources I have spoken to confirm that this was not written in a fever specifically for this afternoon. This was drafted, revised, and likely vetted by legal scholars and parliamentary experts over a significant period. It was a loaded gun sitting in a desk drawer, waiting for the right moment to be pulled out. McConnell didn't just criticize the former president's rhetoric. He laid out a specific, coherent argument regarding his eligibility and his standing within the party's future by focusing on a legal argument rather than a moral one. McConnell gave his caucus cover. He gave them a way to say, "I still support the policies, but I cannot argue with this logic." That is a critical distinction. In politics, and especially in the Senate, you need to give your allies a lifeboat before you sink the ship. McConnell just deployed the lifeboats. The reaction from Mar-a-Lago, as you might expect, has been explosive. We are hearing reports of genuine fury, a sense of betrayal that goes beyond the usual name-calling. Insiders describe the former president as feeling backstabbed by a man he views as owing him for past electoral successes. But this reaction is exactly what McConnell anticipated. In fact, it is part of the plan. By drawing the fire onto himself, McConnell becomes the lightning rod, allowing vulnerable senators in purple states to stay quiet while the leadership takes the heat. It is a classic move in the leadership playbook. Absorb the blow so the rank and file can survive. But the risk here is enormous. We are not just talking about a squabble. We are talking about a potential civil war within the GOP base. You have to ask yourself, why now? Why, after everything, is this the moment the dam breaks? To answer that, we have to look at the pressure that has been building behind the scenes. There is a disconnect between what you see on cable news, the rallies, the cheering crowds, and what is happening in the quiet fundraisers and strategy sessions in Washington, D.C. There has been a growing anxiety among the donor class and the institutionalists that the current path leads to permanent minority status. McConnell's job, as he sees it, is to win elections. If he has decided that the former president is now an anchor rather than a sail, he will cut the rope. That is what you saw today. It was a cold, unsentimental cutting of the rope. But doing it is one thing. Surviving the backlash is another. We need to talk about the signal mentioned in the reports. In the Senate, rarely is anything done in isolation. When the minority leader moves, he usually knows he has the votes or the support to sustain the move. This suggests that conversations have been happening in the cloakrooms and the private dining rooms for weeks. Senators who would never criticize Trump on camera may have been urging McConnell to do this in private. It creates a dynamic where the public face of the party is at war with its private reality. You are watching a party try to metabolize its own history and decide if it can digest it or if it has to reject it entirely. As we dig deeper into this, keep in mind that the language McConnell used was designed to be quoted. He spoke of the party moving on. That is a directive, not a suggestion. He is trying to create a self-fulfilling prophecy. If he says it is over, and he says it with enough authority and enough people believe him, then it becomes true. Power in Washington is often an illusion of momentum. If you can convince enough people that the train is leaving the station, they will run to catch it. McConnell is blowing the whistle. The question is who is getting on board and who is being left on the platform. This leads us to the mechanics of what happens next. You might be thinking that we have seen this movie before. Trump gets attacked, he counterpunches, and the attacker fades away. But the institutional weight of the Senate minority leader is different. McConnell controls the purse strings for Senate races. He controls committee assignments. He controls the legislative calendar when they are in power. When he speaks, he is speaking with the leverage of the entire institution behind him. This is not a tweet, it is a structural blockade. I want you to think about the timing. We are in a window where the political landscape is shifting rapidly. By making this move now, McConnell is trying to clear the field before the next primary cycle truly hardens. He is trying to define the post-Trump era before anyone else can define it for him. It is a high-stakes gamble. If he fails, he loses his grip on the conference and perhaps his legacy. If he succeeds, he reshapes American conservatism for a generation. As we continue to analyze the fallout, remember that for the average voter, this might feel like noise, but the consequences of this speech will filter down to your local ballot. It will determine who runs for Senate in your state, what kind of ads you see, and what issues are prioritized in Washington. This is the origin point of the next few years of political conflict. We are going to look at the specific arguments McConnell made and why he chose those specific words. Because in the Senate, no word is accidental. Every syllable is weighed. And today, the scale tipped. When that scale tips in the Senate, it rarely tips back. This brings us to the core of what actually transpired on the floor. Beyond the headlines and the shockwaves rippling through social media, what McConnell delivered was less of a political stump speech and more of a constitutional indictment. He wasn't playing to the galleries. He was playing to the history books and, crucially, to the strict textualists within his own party. The central argument he laid out hinges on a specific, often overlooked interpretation of eligibility and the responsibilities of the office. By framing his opposition not as a matter of personal preference, but as a matter of constitutional duty, he stripped the emotion out of the decision for his colleagues. He essentially told them, you don't have to hate him to vote against him. You just have to follow the law. That provides a massive psychological shield for senators who are terrified of a primary challenge. They can go back to their districts and say their hands were tied by the Constitution, a document their base reveres. You need to understand the mechanism here. In the Senate, procedure is policy. The way a question is framed determines the answer. McConnell knows that if the vote is framed as, do you like Donald Trump? He loses half his caucus. But if the vote is framed as, do you support the integrity of the institution and the rule of law as defined by this specific statute? The calculus shifts entirely. He spent a significant portion of his time today outlining the precedents for disqualification. This is the legal argument sources were buzzing about. It wasn't a vague moral condemnation. It was a roadmap for a conviction that carries the penalty of being barred from future office. He cited specific statutes and historical examples that most of the public, and, frankly, many in the media, had completely forgotten about. He was arming the jurors, the senators, with the evidence they need to return a guilty verdict without looking like they are simply caving to the Democrats. This is where the distinction between political news and institutional reality becomes vital for you to grasp. On the surface, it looks like betrayal. Inside the building, it looks like a rescue mission for the party infrastructure. The institution I keep mentioning, the Senate itself, has an immune system. It tends to reject things that threaten its own power and relevance. For a long time, the Senate bent to the will of the executive branch because it was politically expedient. Today, McConnell signaled that the Senate is reasserting its dominance. He is telling the executive branch, and specifically the former president, that the legislative branch is not a rubber stamp. This is a rebalancing of powers that goes far beyond one news cycle. It is the machine correcting itself. Let's define a few terms that are going to be thrown around in the coming days so you aren't lost in the jargon. You are going to hear a lot about cloture, conviction thresholds, and disqualification. Cloture is just the ability to end debate and force a vote. McConnell is signaling he won't block that path. The conviction threshold is the high bar, 2/3 of the Senate needed to actually convict. By himself, McConnell is just one vote, but as leader, he is the whip in spirit, if not in title. When he signals a vote of conscience in which Senate leadership will not punish you for voting your mind, he is effectively lowering the barrier for defectors. He is unlocking the cage. And disqualification is the ultimate prize here. It is the specific penalty that prevents a removed or convicted official from holding federal office again. That is the target. Everything McConnell said today was laser-focused on reaching that specific sentence in the rulebook. Now, why does this matter to you sitting at home, maybe worrying about inflation or the border or healthcare? It matters because the person who sits in the Oval Office determines the direction of all those things. If one of the major candidates is removed from the board by his own party, the entire landscape of options changes. It means the primary you might vote in next year will look completely different. It means the policies that get debated will shift from grievances about the last election to actual forward-looking agendas. You might feel relieved by this, or you might feel disenfranchised, feeling that the swamp is taking away your choice. That is a valid feeling. What you are witnessing is the friction between pure populism, the will of the crowd, and institutionalism, the rules of the system. McConnell represents the system. Trump represents the disruption. Today, the system struck back hard. To understand how we got to this breaking point, we have to rewind a bit. This didn't happen in a vacuum. The tension between the establishment GOP and the MAGA movement has been the defining story of the last decade, but it was always held together by a fragile truce. We tolerate the chaos because we get the judges and the tax cuts. That was the deal. McConnell was the architect of that deal. He endured the insults, the late-night tweets, and the erratic behavior because he was getting what he wanted, a conservative judiciary and a deregulation agenda. But something changed in the calculation. The return on investment for the establishment plummeted. The electoral losses, the constant drama, the inability to focus on a coherent message. It all started to cost more than it was worth. We also have to look at the buildup within the conference itself. The conference is just the group of all Republican senators. Inside those closed-door lunches, the mood has been shifting for months. I have spoken to staffers who describe a sense of exhaustion. It is not just the scandal of the day, it is the inability to get anything else done because the oxygen is constantly sucked out of the room by the former president. There is a deep, abiding desire among these career politicians to go back to being politicians, to debating budgets and foreign policy, rather than being constantly asked to defend the indefensible. McConnell sensed this fatigue. He knows his members better than they know themselves. He waited until the fatigue was at its peak, until the frustration outweighed the fear, and then he made his move. He didn't create the wave, he just chose the moment to surf it. Think about the incentives here. A senator wants two things: to get reelected and to have power. If staying loyal to Trump guarantees a primary win, but ensures a general election loss, that senator loses power. If the party remains in the minority forever, because it is tied to a polarizing figure, that senator has no power. McConnell's argument today was essentially an electability argument wrapped in constitutional language. He was telling them, if we don't do this, we are wandering in the wilderness for a generation. That is a powerful motivator for people whose entire lives are built around wielding influence. This brings us to the mechanics of the betrayal, as the loyalists are calling it. How did this actually work? You don't just walk out and give a speech like that without checking the temperature. There were phone calls, dozens of them. McConnell likely didn't tell everyone exactly what he was going to say, but he certainly gauged who would stand with him. He probably secured a Praetorian Guard, a small group of senior senators who agreed to back him up immediately after the speech. We saw that happen almost instantly. Within minutes of McConnell stepping down from the podium, 3 other senior Republicans released statements echoing his concerns. That is coordination. That is the mechanics of a coup played out in press releases, and floor speeches created a surround sound effect where it wasn't just one man's opinion, it was the sudden consensus of the party elders. It is also crucial to note the role of the donors in this buildup. The people who write the 7-figure checks have been quietly closing their checkbooks or directing them elsewhere. They want stability. Markets hate uncertainty, and big business, which has traditionally aligned with the GOP, has grown tired of the unpredictability. McConnell is their conduit. When the money talks, the Senate Minority Leader listens. It is highly probable that key benefactors gave the green light, or perhaps even an ultimatum: fix the party, or we are out. When you see a move this bold, always look for the money trail leading up to it. It usually points to a demand for a course correction from the people funding the operation. So we have the official event, a devastating speech invoking constitutional disqualification. We have the mechanism, a coordinated effort to give senators cover to vote for conviction. And we have the background, a slow erosion of trust and value capped by donor pressure and institutional fatigue. But how did the specific decisions get made? How did they decide that today was the day? That comes down to the internal timeline of the Senate and the news cycle. They needed a moment when the former president was arguably at his weakest, or when a specific recent event gave them the fresh ammunition they needed. They capitalized on a window of opportunity where public sentiment was slightly more fluid. Let's walk through the actual drafting of the narrative. McConnell's team likely war-gamed every possible response from Trump. They knew he would attack McConnell's wife. They knew he would threaten primaries. They knew he would call for McConnell's removal as leader. They baked that into the cake. They decided that the damage Trump could do from the outside was manageable compared to the damage he was doing from the inside. It was a triage decision. Cut the limb to save the body. You are watching a high-stakes amputation in real time. And like any surgery, it is messy, it is painful. And the patient, the Republican Party, is currently in shock. But as I explain this, do not fall into the trap of thinking this is the end of the story. It is the end of the beginning. The civil war mentioned in the title of this video is not a metaphor. We are about to see a fracture in the American right that we haven't seen since, arguably, the Bull Moose Party split in 1912. You have the establishment apparatus on one side, the think tanks, the Senate leadership, the Wall Street donors, and you have the populist energy, the grassroots base, and the alternative media ecosystem on the other. McConnell just fired the first shot of the hot war. He is betting that the structure can outlast the storm, but structures are brittle. If the base revolts, if the voters decide that they value the man more than the party, McConnell could find himself the leader of a hollow shell. That is the risk he took today. He bet the House on his ability to steer the ship, but he might have just mutinied against the captain only to find that the crew is jumping overboard. This brings us to the specific actors who now have to decide whether to grab a life vest or go down with the ship. We have talked about McConnell as the architect, but he cannot build this alone. He needs 66 other votes to secure a conviction and the subsequent disqualification. That is the magic number. So who are the key players in this high-stakes whipping operation? You have to look at the Senate Republican Conference as 3 distinct tribes, because McConnell's speech was tailored differently for each of them. First, you have the institutionalists. These are the senators, often nearing the end of their careers, who view themselves as custodians of the Senate's legacy. For them, McConnell's appeal to the Constitution was the only nudge they needed. They have been waiting for a leader to provide the cover of duty so they can vote against a man privately they can express disdain without having to defend it as a personal vendetta. They are the bedrock of this move. Then you have the 2028 hopefuls. These are the senators who see themselves in the White House. They are looking at the former president not as a leader, but as a blockade. As long as he is in the picture, their ambitions are frozen. McConnell just offered them a way to clear the field. They won't say it publicly. They will talk about sorrow and heavy hearts. But privately, they are calculating that a vote to convict is a vote for their own future viability. But the third group is the most critical and the most difficult, the vulnerable incumbents in deep red states. These are the men and women who are terrified of their own voters. They know that if they vote to convict, they will face a primary challenger funded by the MAGA wing almost immediately. McConnell's speech was designed to give them a shield, but it is a thin one. He is essentially asking them to commit political suicide for the good of the party structure. What we are hearing from sources is that McConnell is promising them protection, funding from the Senate Leadership Fund, endorsements from other heavy hitters, and perhaps a guarantee that the donor class will have their backs. It is a protection racket, plain and simple. Vote with me, and I will make sure you survive the fallout. Whether they trust him enough to take that leap is the question that will determine the outcome of this entire endeavor. Now let's look at the responsibility of the media ecosystem in this. You cannot separate the Senate floor from the television screen. Usually, the former president dominates the narrative because he provides the most entertaining content. He is good for ratings. But today, McConnell hijacked the news cycle by offering something even more compelling: conflict. By declaring open war, he forced conservative media outlets to pick a side. Watch closely how this is covered on the major networks tonight. Are they framing McConnell as a traitor, or are they giving weight to his constitutional arguments? That framing is not accidental. It is the result of furious lobbying by communications directors on both sides. We know that McConnell's team has been briefing key anchors and columnists for days, explaining the legal nuances, trying to prime the pump so that when the speech happened, the pundits would be ready to explain why it was necessary rather than just reacting to the shock of it. You also have to consider the role of the echo chamber. The former president's superpower has always been his direct line to the base via social media. He bypasses the filters. McConnell represents the ultimate filter. This is a clash between the gatekeepers and the gatecrasher. The reason this speech is so dangerous for Trump is that it disrupts the feedback loop. When the highest-ranking Republican says this is unacceptable, it gives permission for regular voters to question their loyalty. It introduces doubt. And in politics, doubt is a killer. If a voter in Iowa or South Carolina hears their trusted local senator echoing McConnell's points, the monolithic support for Trump starts to crack. It doesn't have to break completely, it just has to crack enough to make him vulnerable.